Welcome to the Prado Museum. We're here again with our weekly session in English on the social media programming. It's a project with the support of American Friends of the Prado Museum. We thank all of our donors and members for supporting us, and also all of the members of our sister institution in Spain, the Amigos del Museo del Prado. Today I'm here with a very special guest, Professor Michael Yonan, Professor of Art History at the University of California in Davis.
Yes.
And your position is?
I hold the Alan Templeton Endowed Chair in the History of European Art, 1600 to 1830.
Okay.
It's a very long title, yes.
And you've been here for the past 2 days for
right.
a special symposium under
That's
the Females Perspective program.
That's right. So there is a multi-year program taking place here at the Prado, organized by Noelia Garcia Perez, devoted to powerful and important women who have shaped the collections of the Prado. And this week there was a symposium on Isabel de Farnesio, the major Spanish queen of the early 18th century, who had an enormous impact on what you see in the Prado galleries.
Right, and so Isabella Farnese, the American Friends sent out a newsletter also about this, about her program. There's a great documentary about her on the Prado website.
Yes.
And your specialty is kind of on someone who's a little bit younger.
Yes, yes.
Also very important.
Yes, exactly. So I'm not a specialist in Isabel de Farnesio at all. I have written extensively about an Austrian empress, queen and empress, named Maria Theresa of Austria, a very important figure in the history of the Austrian state and the Austrian nation, but also someone who shaped the arts in her land, and did so by connecting her family in various ways to other important families across the continent. And there are some examples of that in the Prado collection that we can talk about.
And for example, we're here right in front of one of her daughters.
Yes, exactly.
So Maria Theresa, just to put us into context, there's the War of Spanish Succession, which her father was one of the contenders.
Yes,
but he didn't win the Spanish throne, and she's the daughter of Charles VI, who was the contender for the Spanish throne. Just to put us in context. And we're talking about she's a ruler from the 1740s to the 1760s?
She early 1740s is when she accedes to her titles, and she rules until her death in 1780. But the moment you're talking about is a really fascinating one, because the Habsburgs are one of Europe's most prominent monarchical families, and they had two branches, main branches, the Spanish branch and the Austrian branch. The Spanish branch dies out in 1700, and that causes the War of Spanish Succession, which is a major European war, sometimes not maybe understood as well as it should be, but it goes on for almost 15 years. And there's great confusion about who is going to rule in Spain, because there's no successor to the last Spanish Habsburg king. Maria Theresa's father tried to get that crown, and he failed. So Spain becomes a little bit of a lost part of the Habsburg Empire from that moment on. And when Maria Theresa comes to power and is in a position to strengthen the Habsburg rule, she looks to Spain and to countries with connections to Spain that might enable her to build up the empire again.
And basically through the strategy of marriage alliances. Marriage, because she had many children to marry.
So it's probably the most famous thing about Maria Theresa. This is one of her daughters. We'll talk about her in a moment. But Maria Theresa had 16 children. And the idea was that these children were an important part of her political role, her political mission, because these children would be sort of opportunities to marry across the empire, across Europe, in order to strengthen political relationships and to make the Austrians connect in various ways to other parts of the continent.
Okay.
So they're very important.
Let's look at also her son that we have a portrait of on the other side of the gallery. Her second son, who would continue the Austrian Habsburg line.
That's right.
And then also let's talk a little bit not only about who he is, but also her art collecting and how she was following, because the female perspective is about how these women leaders affected art collecting.
Yes. And I'll also say these are paintings by the wonderful German artist Anton Raphael Mengs, who was active in Madrid for 2 different stages of his career. He also was active in Rome, where he died, and also did commissions around Germany. And they're actually very high quality pictures. They're some of the loveliest Mengs paintings that you will see. So this is the older brother of the sister that we just saw on the other wall. His name is, well, Peter Leopold would be the English name. Pietro Leopoldo is how he was often referred to. I call him Leopold because it's the easiest name to remember him by. And he's important because you hear the joke of the heir and the spare, right? Well, he was the spare, and it turned out to be good that he was the spare because his brother did not produce children that would go into adulthood in order to continue the dynastic line. He did. He had a very large family, and so the line actually passes through him. And that becomes very important to Habsburg, you might say the Habsburg mission of representing itself to the world, because he's the person who will continue the dynasty into the future. And I just think that's a gorgeous portrait. It's really beautifully done.
Yeah, any of the details?
Yeah, I mean, there's some wonderful things. I mean, we were talking a minute ago about the Order of the Golden Fleece, which you can see there. That is a noble order, international order of knights, and the idea behind it was that it connected people a little bit like a fraternity or something like that.
At the highest level.
At the highest level, yes, exactly. And the Habsburgs in particular were very sort of interested in that idea that they were part of this order. It had symbolic value for them. And so the boys, when they were born, would be brought into the order, inaugurated into the order while they were still infants, in order to prepare them for their noble careers later in life. Right. So he is the older sister of the beautiful Maria Carolina, or older brother, sorry, older brother.
A little bit about art collecting of Maria Theresa, or her art patronage?
Yes, so one of the things I was able to talk about in the symposium this week is how much Maria Theresa and Isabel de Farnesio are similar and different from each other. So they are very different in some ways. Isabel appears to have been more interested in the aesthetic qualities of art. So art, the idea of collecting art because it's quality art, beautiful to look at and important and aesthetically vibrant. Maria Theresa, on the other hand, had a much more kind of instrumental idea about what art was for. It was more for a purpose.
Okay.
And it served a purpose because it did something politically that was necessary, rather than just being beautiful. So Maria Theresa commissioned a lot of portraits, and those portraits were part of the international plan she had to connect Vienna, where she lived, to other parts of the continent. So it's more like a functional view of art.
So I just want to add also for the viewers that one of her 16 daughters is Marie Antoinette.
Yes, so if she's known to anybody,
it
is because her youngest daughter was Marie Antoinette, famously played by Marianne Faithfull in the movie Marie Antoinette from a few years ago, right? That's Maria Theresa, that's the person we're talking about. And Marie Antoinette was very important because, of course, she married the French king, and that made this connection between Spain, France, and the Bourbon dynasties of those countries and the Habsburgs really solid. And it was something she was really happy to see one of her children do.
Right.
Even though it didn't end so great, you know?
Turbulent times.
Turbulent times, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
And great to talk about how the European connections all work together and how the Prado has a large repository of all these portraits. We don't have Maria Theresa, but we do have her.
We have two of her children.
That she was trying to make the connections with the Spanish, the new Bourbon Spanish dynasty and the French Bourbon dynasty.
Yes.
And so it's very interesting for all of us history lovers and art lovers.
Terrific.
So thank you for following us today, and we will see you again in our next session.